Hello YouTube, welcome back. Chris here. Today we're going to do another Let's Fix a Bike. I've got a 90's Trek Multitrack, nothing too crazy special. But this bike has a very common problem that I see on a ton of bikes, and something you may have encountered as well. So I want to kind of show you what's going on here and how we diagnose it and fix it. So if we come down here, this has the older style brake called the Cantilever. Cantilever brakes have a cable that comes down and then usually some sort of splitter, and they pull from the sides, kind of the predecessor to the V-brake. Now whenever I see these older Shimano cantilevers, I always check one thing before letting the bike, just checking for a tune-up, and that is the plastic casings on the springs. So these bikes have a spring down here that's encased in a plastic casing. Well, this bike, if I had to guess, is probably early to mid 90s, and super common to see this plastic piece crack, as you can see in this one here. What happens is, as this plastic piece cracks, that spring does not retain tension. It doesn't have anything to hold it in place and give the proper tension. This one still has a little bit, but not much, and the other one's actually worse. Let's see if I can get a good angle here. Well, I can't get a very good angle, but look at this. Piece of the plastic just came right off. So that plastic over the years just gets really brittle and it cracks. And there you can see this entire exposed spring here is supposed to be encased by this plastic piece that goes around there. So when that happens, you lose most of the tension in your brake. Sometimes you'll get it to adjust a little bit. It makes it near impossible to center the brakes. And like I said, it's something I see all the time in the bike shop. Very common with these older cantilevers. Well, unfortunately, I've never really seemed to find a source for just those plastic covers. So typically we just replace the brakes. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to first take these brakes off and show them to you off the bike, and then I will show you the new ones and we'll put them on. Alright, so I've got the brakes off the bike. I've got one facing upward. This one goes this way, but I flipped it over so you can see the damaged casing. The reason this happens is this spring is actually tensioned by the plastic. So you can see that little half circle there where the post from the spring goes in, and having that tension on that plastic ring is what cracks it over time. The plastic gets old and brittle, and that spring keeps pushing against it. Eventually it just splits it in two. And you can see this one here also cracked, and cracked right at where the spring goes in. Up top here, you can see a new setup. Now they still do use a plastic housing on here, but it is much tougher, and I believe the spring now mounts into the actual metal. These are also Shimano cantilevers, just a newer variation of what you're seeing here. Like I said, normally if I could just get that plastic cover, I would just replace that, but I haven't found a source for those, so I just replaced the whole brake system. Now these aren't horribly expensive. These guys typically run like 15 to 25 bucks for a pair of calipers. So that's what the issue is. We're going to put these new cantilevers on here and get it going. I always like to start with just a tiny dab of grease on these posts, just to keep it from binding up, so that when we, in the future, when these need to come off, they come off easily. Once that is done, we'll slide our first cantilever on. There's 3 holes in here to tension the spring. I always use the middle hole to start. 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to use. If you have an older spring and it's kind of losing some of its bounce, you may need to go to the next hole. But with a nice new spring, middle hole should do it just fine. And then we're going to put our bolt back in, fixing the new cantilever to the bike. We'll now do the same thing for the other side here. Try to give you a decent view. On this bike, I'm going to reuse the cable and the straddle cable here. That's what they call this piece up top, because I think it's in good enough shape. We'll try it here. If I need to replace it, I will. The newer generation cantilever has a 5mm Allen bolt instead of that hex socket bolt, which is good, makes it easier. So we're going to get this kind of on here. I may need to adjust the cable again, but what I first want to do is get my pads set up. So you can see it's off center. The pads aren't contacting right. So next we're going to do our pads, center up our brakes, and that front brake will be done. These are arguably one of the harder types of pads to adjust. You take a 10mm combination wrench, put it on the back. You can use a 5mm in the front of the pad here to hold it and position it. Now once this is loose, you can move this pad up and down. You have kind of a cup and ball here, so you can shift it side to side to get your toe, and you can also slide the pad in and out. So a lot of different ways you can adjust this. I'm going to bring it up here, and with these type of cantilevers, you may have to try it a couple times because it's real easy to shift these around while trying to tighten them down so they don't end up right where you wanted them. So you may have to fiddle with them. That's what the difficult part is. You can get it just so close but not well aligned. That actually looks pretty darn good. A little bit of toe to it, but nice grab. I'm going to call that one good. Let's do the other one. Now you can see this one's a little further away. We still got to center the brake. But first I want to get these guys aligned. Oops. Okay, that's a little bit low. Other than that, it looks pretty good, so we're going to slide it up a hair. And this is what I was talking about. It's a little trial and error. You may have to tighten it down, pump the brake a few times, see how it's reacting, make an adjustment, do the same thing. I think most bike mechanics would not like the idea of doing this while people are watching. Yeah, it looks pretty good, maybe a little bit too high, because these can definitely be one of the most frustrating types of pads to adjust. They do adjust well, it's just a lot of guesswork. So when you get them where they go, they're good. It's just the problem is, that looks pretty good. Getting them to where they need to be. So you can see it's pulling mostly from this side. We're going to fix that with a screwdriver. So you've got your centering screws on the outside. Oh, they only do one centering screw. Some versions have two. This one's only got one. So we can balance it by loosening or tightening this spring. So we're going to loosen this because we want to pull more from the other side. A little more even. We have to give it a little more tension. Looks nice and balanced. Pulling from both sides. Pads are contacting good. Let's go ahead and give the wheel a spin. And look at that. So 1990s stopping power. Hope you found this informative. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions, concerns, please let me know below in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And we'll see you next time.